Let's call this meeting to order. Planning and zoning, January 28, 2025.
Chairman Steve Dyer.
Here.
Kristen Hurst.
Here.
Ryan Green.
Here.
Kyle Cook.
Here.
Mark Zolenzowski.
Here. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I added it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, public comments on items not on the agenda. Looking around the room, I'm not seeing any. Moving on to action on the minutes. The last meeting that we're going to talk about would have been December 4th, 2024. This is the one between that got canceled.
Yep. I approve. Are you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Can I vote on this since I wasn't here?
Usually abstain, but it doesn't matter.
Mark Zolenzowski.
Yes.
Steve Dyer.
I'll abstain.
Absent.
Yep.
Kristen Hurst.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes. It was right here.
No.
You weren't here, Ryan.
Oh, I wasn't here?
Technically, no, but.
I read the minutes. I'm confident. Confident in it.
It's just like he
And
remembers.
that's okay.
It's almost like I was there.
I appreciate
Seems like cheating, but whatever.
Application 121760 lot split for 625 West Coshocton Street.
Yep,
Yep. Yes, sir.
so I'll be real brief, and then if the applicant has anything to say, you can kick it over to them. For some reason, we've had a flurry of lot splits coming before you, which in the past, we haven't had a lot, but all of a sudden, we have about 4. Tonight, you'll see 2 of those, just as a,
just one.
I'm sorry, 1. Yes, 1 tonight, and then 2 coming down the pipeline. So with these, what we look for is, does the lot split create any type of non-conformity? So if it's a size and a scale that's appropriate and it's allowed for our zoning ordinance, typically there's no reason for denial, because it's meeting your criteria set forth in your zoning. So with the McDonald's, that is a representation of something that is a lot split request. It doesn't create any non-conformities with that particular lot. If you're looking for a recommendation, it would be recommend to approve. However, we don't typically recommend one way or the other. And then at the end of this, Trevor is going to give a little, called a dissertation. Maybe that's elevating it too high, but a little thought as to how we could handle lot splits, because they are so mechanical. There's not a lot of subjectivity to discern between the board as far as, okay, are we interpreting anything, are we not interpreting it? This is really boilerplate stuff.
Does it even have to come? Is that what
It has to come because in our ordinance, it defines that it has to come, so that's why it's before you. But I believe what Trevor's gonna pitch tonight to you all is a change in our ordinance that would prevent it, if it meets all the criteria. Obviously, it can be done in-house, and then you're not burdened with something that's probably something that you really don't get a decision in anyhow. If you were to deny a lot split approval that meets all the criteria, pretty challengeable in court. I won't say it's a definable case, but it's probably pretty challengeable. So that's my introduction. Back to you.
So on that note, I think the board pretty much agrees with what you said there. I think everybody's on the same page. Oh, our applicant is here. Would you like the opportunity to come up and talk?
My name's Alex Benson with CESO. It's pretty basic lot split. It's going from Johnstown Retail. They sold back to McDonald's, so they are sole ownership of that parcel. It's kind of interesting. Years ago, that was subdivided and it was a smaller, like 1.648 acre. Then they wrote a meets and bounds description, combining it into a larger lot. Now they want to go back to how it was before.
Okay. So, any questions from the board? Without hearing any, what's that? Nope. I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second?
Christian, seconded.
Steve Dyer.
Yes.
Kristen Hurst.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Kyle Cook.
Yes.
Marshall Lubinsky.
Yes.
Okay.
Job done. Thanks for coming in. All right, application 122330, variance 310, 314, 316. How do you say that road?
Botachia.
Botachia Boulevard.
I don't know. That's how our staff always said it.
Bo,
I believe it's an Italian bicycle company.
Which is Botecchia.
Tech.
Yeah.
Ah,
Botechia.
That doesn't sound
Corrected.
Italian at all, but Botachia does.
Hey, man. Hey, it's Russia, Ohio. So what are you gonna do?
You wanna kick this one off? I'll dive right in. So I won't steal the applicant's conversation with you all, but again, what I will say is there's probably gonna be a conversation once we get through this application for a bit of internal ability to do some things. Trevor's gonna pick that up as well, putting you on the spot tonight. He actually came for something else, and since we didn't get him for something else, we're gonna get our dime tonight. So, with that being said, what you have before you is a setback encroachment, that there are setback provisions that are associated with this particular area, defined by the PUD that was originally put forth. We found the documentation that would appear on the plat map to reference a 5-foot setback. This has an encroachment. I'll let the applicant speak to and narrate how this encroachment occurred and what they're requesting, and then you can then decide whether it's substantial encroachment that should be granted a variance, or it's minimal and that maybe it should or shouldn't be. So I think I misworded that there for a moment, but nevertheless, he can introduce it. You all can then decide. There's a variance criteria that you can go through. It's in your codified ordinance. From a review standpoint, if you want to review that, we used to have previous zoning member, Ben Lee, would literally go right down through it. So you don't have to do that out loud, but he would. That's something you can do as you're looking through it, and reviewing the application. So without that, I'm gonna turn it back to you, Steve.
Yes, absolutely. Let's, he's here tonight. If you could introduce yourself.
My name's Mike Sulovecki. I'm with the Johnstown Investments. We're actually the owner and builder on these lots. And I'm going to predicate this. I've been building for 30-something years. This is the first time I've had a zoning variance in 30 years. So if this is a little clunky, just please bear with me. But a little background, I am one of the two builders that in 2018 bought the balance of the lots that were in Concord Crossing East. Mr. Schleybaugh Builders bought all the single family. I bought the 19 neo-traditional lots, that cluster. The subject lots we're talking about tonight are a group of 4 lots. They're actually the last 4 houses that we've built. So as of with these lots, that entire project is now built out. These houses were all built, we generally build them in clusters. These were all built, all surveyed, and basically all constructed at the same time during last year. They basically all were done beginning to the end of October. So what materialized on this is in November, I received a call from my title company and my surveyor at the tire company when they went to run title for selling a contract for lot 314. Hoyt Surveying, who I do business with, was showing a variance on the setback of the house. He was showing that it was over the setback line. I reached out to Atkinson Survey, that is our construction surveyors. They ran their numbers and said, no, we're showing that you're 2 inches on the inside of the line. So at that point in time, I contacted them both. I know both of them, they're good surveyors. I said, can you guys both go out there, resurvey it, let me know what you think. They both went out there, resurveyed, came back and compared notes, and they said, to the best of our knowledge, it looks like you're 2 inches over the line. So at that point, since these had all been built in one location, I said, do me a favor, can you go back out and look at the other ones? Because since these were all shot at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm not just going to have the same thing. So they went back out. Actually, Atkinson, who does my construction surveying, actually used Greenland to actually do the observations on this. So when these all came back, the best that we can determine right now is 308, which is not part of this, but was part of the house, is actually fine. It sits within the setback line. 310 and 316 are showing 2 inches over the line. 314 is showing 4 inches over the line. Now, what's causing this? It's a good question. The best that we've been able to determine, and I got to tell you, we have spent weeks looking at this, is there seems to be some sort of a discrepancy in the builder pins, the pins that were originally set in the development back in 2004. It appears when you measure from the east, they're getting a different setback than if they measure from the west. Most of your surveys on mortgages come off streets. Most of the ones that we do for the construction come off the alley to the other side. And so with that being said and done, what I did is I went back through this and I took what was the most conservative survey, because there is some interpretation on this when they set those grid points. And so to the best of our knowledge right now, we're sitting 2 inches over on 310 and 316, sitting 4 inches over on 314. So that's kind of how we got here. If you take actually a look at it, obviously they're small variances, but they're variances. You can't argue that. I think as I kind of detailed in the analysis, first off, these things aren't even visible when you walk down the street. If you sit and look at Batekia and you look up there, these things look identical to any of the other houses that we built. We do due diligence ourselves. These are surveyed twice during construction, and none of our construction surveys show any issues whatsoever on them. It doesn't really have any impact. It's not encroaching upon any easement. There's a 5-foot easement in front. It's not encroaching upon the easement. It's not affecting services. About the only thing that you can probably say about it is it does present a burden to my buyers, because now I have a non-compliant situation. So going forward, any time that they go to get title insurance and or loan, et cetera, they're going to have to get a variance endorsement on their policy. So since I've become aware of it, I said, let me just get these all out here. I'm not the sort of person that's going to push this off on a buyer. I'd rather just get it all taken care of. So that's sort of what brings me here tonight, and I am more than welcome to answer any questions or concerns.
Anybody have any questions? A
No, I think it seems reasonable.
few years ago, this also happened with Schleybaugh. We've done this before in that same neighborhood, so I'm wondering if there's a survey that's
I
off
think it
somewhere.
just could be just a matter of where the stake is. Did the stake go in straight? Did it go in like at an angle?
And the complication on these are very, very tight lots. They're 50 by 100s.
Yeah.
There is not a lot of room for error on these. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, we have determined in the past, on the Middleburn side, we did have some survey variances that we brought back to the conservative. But those were much more evident when you saw them.
Yeah, because there's more owners here than there are.
So that was, yeah, the question that they're asking is if there will be more. We had the same question with Schleybaugh. If there was one, now these are much closer than what theirs were. We kind of gave them the get out of jail free card on that one, on the first one that they came in with, because there was a couple properties but it was the first time that they had issues too. So we just wanted to make sure that there weren't going to be further issues with a survey that was wrong or something.
No, so the good news is, as I mentioned, these are the last houses.
Okay.
There are no more that will be built, and so we're not really setting a precedent. And to the best of my knowledge, the new phases, they took all the neo-traditional out.
Yep.
So this is it.
You said the magic words, not setting a precedent.
Other than that, the only thing I wanted to clarify is that I'm not related to the buyer or the surveyor.
The guy who did the survey?
Although my uncle is Jeff Green, no.
Different one.
I'm not related to him, and I'm not related to the buyers that are listed on here
I
either.
don't know, that's not a very common name, so.
Like Kristen pointed out, it's very, very small.
Yeah.
Sean said, mentioned the request, what are they called?
Practicalities.
The questions.
Yeah,
yes.
looking at this, it
Those
looks
are
like they're
listed on
And
fine.
page
inches are
11.
not visible to the neighbors. It's not like they're gonna be like, oh, they got a bigger house because, or like it's
Yeah.
not impeding anyone.
And it does fall underneath the 4 inches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's number 7.
I motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Kyle Cook,
Yes.
Dylan Teske,
Yes.
Steve Dyer,
Yes.
Kristen Hurst. Yes. Brian Green.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very happy buyers.
Very nice applications.
I'm sure that was frustrating for you.
You answered all the questions.
Unfortunately, the couple was supposed to buy this just before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
Their apartment people actually been living with their parents.
Oh, goodness.
Saving
Should've just
money,
had them
baby.
come up and talk, we would've approved right off of that.
Close on the banquet.
Zoning inspector report. Anybody have any questions or comments on this?
No.
No food trucks. And we see 2 lot splits on there. That's weird, it's all at once.
Yeah, you'll, I'll
With the
just
stag
wait for
room. It's right here, what's up with that?
What?
The stag room.
Oh, the stag room.
Oh, it's official business now, the stag room.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the backside of the
It's not a
mattress
speakeasy.
place.
It's not a
It's not a
speakeasy.
speakeasy, you gotta rent it in advance. You got a secret code to go in. Not that I
Other
know.
than the rental, that's a speakeasy.
Sounds like you have already been there.
Just curious what the sign is, if you remember. There's a sign, it's marked 1.
Oh, is that the eye doctor?
If
There's one
if you remember off the top of your head, if not, no.
Is that the eye doctor?
At the former Crowworks building.
What number are you referring to?
You're skipping to my new business that I'm gonna give you guys.
Number 7.
Jeez.
Applications, zoning violations, which one are you at?
Number 7.
Number
Applications number 7, signs.
seven. Signs, 1. Yes,
The eye doctor? Just curious if you know what it was.
yes.
Okay.
Stealing.
All right, well, moving on.
let it
There's
go.
no solar panels.
Oh, it's,
How about other business?
hey, all right. I'll wait, or I can dive in.
No,
Okay.
President was
So other business next week, or the next application, you will see, I'll try to give you guys some tee-ups on some things that I know are headed your way. Oh, no, there we go. You'll see a variance request. The applicant was in tonight. They went through the design review process. The design review was approved conditional upon 2 items. 1, the lettering being 1 inch in thickness to meet the codified ordinance, as well as conditioned upon your approval. So there's a new business in the downtown, Professional Vision Care, the old Crowworks building. The original application had 1 sign associated with it, so it got presented to the design review board. The owner came in, and it was clarified that his request was for 2. The sign company only sent us 1 visual, so our assumption was it was 1 visual. He then clarified he would want 2. Well, let's continue with the process here. They can make a conditional approval upon, obviously, if you all approve the variance, that he could have 2, and then they also define, if you don't approve the variance, which one that they would prefer, and that is the one on Main Street. So, next zoning meeting, you all will more than likely see that variance request. So, I can dive into that a little bit more as far as what you'll likely see, but what I told the applicant is each situation is different. However, there has been other occurrences where a variance has been granted for signage that faces 2 streets. So with that, you all will go through the practicalities test and see, and I know the board has talked about how many signs are allowed and not allowed for a singular building. So I think each one has to be reviewed appropriately. Obviously, if it's in a downtown district or if it's in a, you know, a much more urbanized area, maybe that's a difference, maybe it's not. So, and the style of sign probably has a place in the conversation as well. So you guys can look at that next week. Let's see, what else got pulled? A couple things got pulled from the agenda item tonight. One lot split.
Main Street.
Yeah, one lot split that did not meet the rubber stamp. And what I mean by that is it did actually create a non-conforming situation, so I'm having Trevor review that. When we saw the lot application, all we got was the survey and the auditor's map. It didn't reference any buildings, so prior to the meeting, I had a chance to get online, look at it, and noticed, ooh, we may have some situation here. So I'm not going to use all my uncool technology. I'm gonna let Trevor unpack that one and get an actual staff report for you all, and we'll be in contact with that particular applicant on the next process. It's very likely that if they want to go through with that, they'll require a variance associated with it, so then that would be in tandem. The approval would be simultaneously or not at all, so that'll be something you guys have to review. Conditional use application will be likely coming through you
Where is
all.
it?
This is for the nursing home. They're doing an expansion. It is a permitted use, but it's a permitted use under the conditional use category. So anytime it's a conditional use, has to be presented to your board to make sure that it's appropriate in that area, and that any other supplemental regulations you want to impose, you can. Within obvious reason, they have to be a justifiable situation. So that'll be something you'll likely see at your next meeting.
Sounds big.
I think those are the two big items for you all. I mentioned earlier that Trevor had put together some administrative items that you could talk about tonight, and then if you all were so inclined, we could instruct Trevor, if you agreed with it, to draft some legislation. It would then come before you at the next meeting and the following meeting. You could review it and see if that is something you felt you wanted to recommend to council. And then it would go to council, and then they could see if they felt it was appropriate or not. So if you guys have any other business, feel free to go into that. And if you want Trevor to take this opportunity now, you can, or you can wait till after some further discussion.
Yeah, I think let's take this opportunity to hear from Trevor.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Do
a
you want
couple
the,
things.
do you want the thingy?
Sure. If it reaches.
I mean, I can try to navigate it for you, but it's
Yeah.
probably a
What
little
about-
easier for you.
Advertising on dumpsters.
Yeah.
Oh, look at you, you already got it.
Like Rumpke advertising on.
Like, dumpster
What
enclosures.
does it say about your business?
I just,
Subliminal messaging.
no, like the dumpsters enclosures, people have been advertising those in Columbus and in Newark. Seen that?
I can't say that.
Oh, you're talking about like on,
I got a.
you got a dumpster, and then you got the enclosure that goes around it, you're advertising on that.
Enclosure, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen Canes hangs their signs on those.
My
I
kids.
think that I would qualify as,
Orchard on
it's not the
Christmas
building,
Day.
so
All
is
right.
just seeing that.
Okay, so in light of
Yeah.
a couple of recent issues, one being.
I can't right now.
The variance that we just heard, I shared with Sean a process that I helped write when I was working for a city in Florida in another job. And we wrote this process because we were getting a lot of similar requests. We were having surveying issues or just like very small encroachments into surveys as development was occurring. And so rather than continue to make people pay fees, our timeframes were a little longer than here, but still it's a delay in the process and that sort of thing. We developed this basically administrative waiver of setbacks that could be used for those sort of small encroachment scenarios like what we just saw earlier this evening. And basically what this would do is it would allow staff to issue an administrative waiver so long as, let's see, this is kind of the key one, the waiver shall not exceed 10% of the required setback or 1 foot, whichever is less. So in this case, like, they had a 5-foot setback, and they were, so at the most, we could have, what would that have been, 5 inches? Or
60 inches, so 6 inches.
yeah, so 6 inches on that case. So we could, in this case, if this would have been adopted, Sean could have approved those variances because they would have been less than 6 inches or 1 foot
Yeah.
in this case. And so we found this was a useful tool. We didn't use it a lot, but it was handy when it did need to be used, that we didn't have to basically have someone pump the brakes and go through a whole application process and things like that. So this is something that we can discuss further. If you're not even open to it, that's completely fine too, but I wanted to at least throw it out there to see if you all felt that this would be something useful for the city moving forward, given that I think, just given the fact that the pace of development and probably the pressure and the number of inquiries that you all are getting,
Yeah.
things like these can really help out.
Well, I think it's a big, like, it's a good way of, like, city fund use too, right, to not have to put time towards it, right?
Exactly, because instead of having, Sean or whoever your planner is, once you get that person on board, like, they don't have to spend a couple hours going over it, well, it's just like.
5
look at
minutes
It meets
in.
the requirements, out the
Yeah.
window, sort of thing. So, it's fairly straightforward, and I'm trying to think, I was gonna go through the rest of it real quick. So, it can always be used where it's a legal, non-conforming lot or a conforming lot, so if there's a bunch of other inconsistencies, you cannot apply this. It's only applied to a principal structure or an accessory structure, so if you have different setbacks for like fences or something like that, you can't use this process to waive those setbacks. And let's see.
Right.
6, you can't use this to increase your
Wow.
maximum impervious coverage. I don't think that would be a problem here. And then this I left in here. I don't think this is overly applicable here because wetlands aren't as big of an issue as they were in Florida. But again, I left it in there that you can't use this to encroach into any sort of wetland or anything like that. So trying to avoid any sensitivities in this. This is basically for the most cut and dry cases, like what we just saw. So that's really the intent behind it.
No, I think it's a good idea.
And I'll send this to Sean, you all can review it at the next meeting if you have changes that you want to have to make. But that's basically set up the way I've been used to using it in the past.
So we'll have you guys, if you're okay with it, Trevor, and you're okay with it, draft. Trying to figure out where this would get plugged in.
Copy and paste
Would
it.
it be on our?
Well, this would stay within our ordinances, so we'd have to change the, like you said, the foot, you know.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't think you change the setback, but you.
So we'll make
Yeah.
a recommendation to council and then,
Yeah.
So he'll draft this differently if you'd like, or exactly as written. So
if
since he
ever,
has it drafted.
I was gonna say, if everybody's good with this, I mean, if you wanna see it in writing, we can do that, otherwise we can just make the recommendation now.
Whatever you
I think
want.
that's the
think
best.
everything's perfectly fine on there.
Send
The
it
other
up.
Time
thing I-
efficient.
Send it up the hill.
The other thing I was thinking of is,
Assuming the city wants it.
like he mentioned the wetlands, because we don't have a ton of wetlands, but
Sean's
do
even
we,
perked up when I mentioned it.
It's just streamline things, it makes sense.
It does.
It takes time to send out letters.
Yeah, we'll
We
need
do
to
require a fee.
I mean, do we call agricultural?
In this particular
instead?
situation, the
about
displacement
where
of
the
the
development's
family was
Yeah.
Preset in
the
town already.
troubling
but
part.
EG land.
Right.
The family didn't do anything wrong. They were ready to move in. And you're like, oh man, I wish I could give you the approval, but I can't. And so they had to wait because for a variance, you have to give publication in the Newark Advocate 14 days in advance, and you got to get it to the Advocate like 5 days before you run the publication. So if this would not have been going through the regular variance process, there's a very likely possibility that they would have been in before Christmas. Not to sound sentimental, but it's like, oh, your heart just broke. These people
Okay,
are
let me
young
ask,
people.
flip
I'd have
side,
found a different
are there any
way.
negatives?
With this, no. Usually I'm pretty,
It doesn't seem like it, but is there anything we're not thinking?
No, because it has a very low threshold of.
And it seems like there would never be a time we would say no.
They're
Right,
out
and-
there.
and generally in those sorts of cases, like.
You don't want to change the setback line, which, because generally you want to keep it where it
Well,
is,
that-
but,
That's applies to the whole zoning district,
Right.
yes, exactly, so it helps in those sorts of situations where it's just a slight encroachment sort of.
there's no reason to have the bureaucracy of like meetings and all this stuff.
and I'm usually
need to
pretty
recommend
sterile
where
to the
it's gonna go
sentimental
in
pieces,
ours,
but
so.
this one I'm like, oh, this is going to get approved.
No, they'll put it in
But
there.
the bank won't.
Somewhere.
close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unless I sign it, I'm like, I'm not signing it.
I'll recommend that we, the
11:33
council
now.
adopts it.
Do you
As
want to
written.
change the wording in any of it?
The other thing I was thinking of is, as you mentioned, like wetlands, I guess there are some wetlands, and thinking of where developments are already pre-platted in town, because I live right next to it, there is technically wetlands right there. But I'm also thinking of maybe agricultural land, because most of any of the other developments do butt up against farmland at this point. So do we just add that verbiage that it doesn't?
The way
Does
it's
it
written-
encroach if it's still on their property?
The way it's written currently, you cannot use this to encroach onto any wetland, so it
Right.
takes that ability.
Or on anyone's property?
I agree with leaving the wetlands piece in there. I was just thinking of if we needed to add in, like I mentioned, I guess it's like anybody else's property, whether it be wetlands, farmland, etc.
Well, that measurement is taken from your own property boundary, so nothing in here would allow you to go beyond your own.
Right, I think what he's saying, to your point, is if that's the case, then why even have wetlands written on there? If we do have wetlands, then let's go ahead and add agriculture, because we,
just think,
unlike
yeah,
Florida,
right.
we have wetlands, but not really, so let's at least maybe change the terminology to that. And obviously, this will still fall within what we have set as our ordinances of 4 inches as opposed to the foot, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'll second the, yeah.
And you don't want to see it back in legislation.
I think that would be.
I'm okay.
Yeah, everything on here is great.
Yeah.
So motion is to recommend the edits to council will draft. Kristen Hurst,
Approve, or yes?
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Kyle Cook,
Yes.
Mark Zolonzowski,
Yes.
Steve Dyer.
She can hear me.
Oh, I can't hear anything. I didn't hear wetlands, I heard weapons.
That's not what I heard.
I'm like, wait a minute, that can encroach. That can definitely encroach.
Those never, those never get used to encroach.
All right, so
Yeah,
the other item would be a process to, an administrative process to allow for, I was used to calling them small scale plats, so what's on the screen, which that's way too small for you to read. But basically what this would be, what's that? Okay. The purpose of these were to allow for someone to split their property so long as they did not need to dedicate any right-of-way or create new streets or anything like that. So let's say you had a big lot right along Main Street or something, you wanted to cut it up into 3 lots. There's no new alleys, no new streets required, anything like that. So long as all of those lots meet the zoning requirements and all of that, it can be approved administratively. I would recommend for something like this, I think we had maybe a maximum of 10 lots. I think I would probably feel more comfortable with 5 or maybe less lots, because I think what you're gonna see a lot of are 1 lots to 2 and 3s, not like 1 lot to 10. So I think if you're going 10 lots for 1, you probably want to have some overview for you all. But if it's something small like 1 to 2, 1 to 3, something like that, I don't know that you all want to have that oversight.
I don't know, I kinda wanna have that oversight.
Do what?
I think it's okay to have that kind of oversight,
Okay.
just because of things we've seen in the past here.
When those come to us for a decision, is it like a rubber stamp approval, or do we have the ability? Like,
Generally on that, I mean, for a subdivision process, I think so long as, especially in this case, now if someone's wanting to come in and construct new roads and you all are gonna have to absorb all of that at the end of the day, I think you have a
Right.
different set of parameters you can review it. But if someone is just wanting to divide their land and not burden the city with new roads or anything like that, that is kind of a different level of review from a planning perspective, just because you're not gonna have 100 new homes, you might have 2 or 3 new homes. You know, assuming it's a residential, division of
well, this
property.
says non-residential, right?
A small scale plat or non-residential.
Oh, and
plat. Yeah, those are 2 separate
Oh, okay.
processes, yeah. And keep in mind, this is code from where I used to work, not from Johnstown here.
So what I'm saying is like, so if we have, let's say there's in town an acre property, and it meets all the criteria, let's say for a lot split, so for a lot, do we have grounds to say no? Like, if we don't, then
We do.
we do.
I mean, we have grounds to say no, if there's a lot split that comes in.
That's what I'm just trying to like take, it-
Because
if
I mean, if
it's
it's
rubber
a
stamping,
variance,
then
right?
like what's
If it's
the
gonna
point?
meet
Right.
all the codes, you probably wouldn't, but you could.
Yeah, because this is saying it meets all the requirements for such
Could be-
big lots.
My question, if it meets all the requirements, why does it require an approval? Like, maybe that's a dumb question.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
And poke holes, like I'm like legitimately, I'm not saying it's wrong, I just don't understand it.
I'm always afraid of the unknown.
Well, I guess,
Right.
What do you accidentally open up yourself to?
well, I guess someone still needs to review to make sure it meets all the requirements.
Yes,
Someone
it-
administratively does, right?
Correct.
It's
In
not
this
that,
case, the staff would be doing that versus
Us.
you all doing it, yeah. And so, and keep in mind, if you wanna really keep this narrow at first, you could just simply limit it to just lot splits, like going from one lot to two lots. Like, you don't have to have any more than that. We can write the legislation however you all feel most comfortable.
do you
So
guys
if
see
you're
a lot of lot split requests?
We hadn't, but we're seeing
I think you will start to see them as
some
people
now.
aggregate property and try to resplit it and subdivide it to sell it and that sort of thing. You're going to see more of these as development pressure continues to increase.
And what's odd is for a lot combination, it doesn't have to come before you. So if somebody wants to combine.
The
a lot-
assumption there is if you're combining lots, you're making things,
Why is that?
generally, from my
This is
experience,
code.
the assumption is you're increasing lot size, which means you're generally,
Creating less traffic, less
or you're
impact.
becoming more in conformance with the zoning code, so kind of like no harm, no foul.
But that said, if
Yeah.
someone wanted to split that same lot later, would that have to come before us?
Yep.
Like what you guys did, right?
Yeah,
Like, it was a combination lot.
yeah, that's true,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
So,
What are other cities doing?
do what?
What are other cities doing?
I don't know, honestly, I haven't done a lot of research. This was something that we had used I'd used previously and seemed to work, so I just wanted to share these thoughts of, I haven't.
I think it's an
written
interesting
anything.
thought. I think that it'd be interesting to see what like our surrounding communities like do.
Yeah.
Like people that have seen more of that volume.
Depends on the city and the staff. If they have a lot of staff, I mean, they have more time to go
I
through
mean, I
these
don't wanna
things.
like just charge fees to people to just charge fees to do lot
Yeah.
splits, right? But,
We have to look at
and the only
some
other
of
thing
what
I
the-
could see is if it meets conforming rules, the only reason that would make sense to me, to your point about like, what do you not know? You may have to approve it, but then does it point out something to us, something we didn't think about that you may want to then later? Like, that's the only thing I can, I mean, I'm
Yeah, I
not,
just worry about
I'm
opening
not
up
arguing
our-
one way or the other.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying, like,
Anytime
maybe it
you-
comes and you're like, oh, darn it, we should like, we have to approve this one, but we should go forward, and we would miss that knowledge, like that learning.
Yeah, I would much rather give up 10 minutes to go through something easy and possibly catch something detrimental than give it up altogether. And
And maybe it's one where we watch it and we say, let's like keep this in our back pocket and we watch it through like 6 months or so and say, would we have applied anything? Would this have saved us time? Like, and do we learn anything?
I think for the time being, it's fine to leave it there. I think of like the setups of like who owns what bigger plots along the main roads.
Yeah.
And I kind of relate everything to
And
kind of where I
small
live,
scale
because it's
plots
easy.
mean
Like
what?
Coglin
1
owns
to
an
2
acre
or 3?
parking lot where the old Ford dealership was. There's houses behind it.
Right.
So if they technically want to split that acre in half, I guess the people technically don't own it anymore anyways. Tech bought it, but
Now you're talking about changing driveways, right?
right, because they technically
So
have
they
an
have to
easement
cut
to get to their
through
driveway to get through that parking lot. So if they split
It would
that,
have
they're,
to- it-
yeah.
It would be. a
That would still
non-conforming.
come.
That would-
So it's like a unique scenario, but it's part of where we have and part of where development's going to happen.
The
So
only thing I
it's-
can think of, it'll render a lot useless. Like, I can't think of a situation, but like, hey, I want to split this lot, but now this is kind of, it meets the requirements for my commercial building, but something really small is gonna go on it. So now we have like a vacant space. That's the only thing I could think of.
I'm totally fine, and maybe that's a good approach, is you don't see a lot of these. If you start seeing, 20 throughout a year and you just approved 18 of them.
And you start saying,
You're
maybe
like,
this is like.
Well, yeah, and I think.
Well, that's
if
what we
see-
always
If we
say.
see 20, we'll learn enough to write.
that's what we always say
Put
too. If you
together
approve
something
2
where
variances, change
someone
the
can
zoning.
Right. Yeah.
Like if
so
you approve 2 variances, change the zoning because now it's a rule.
It's
but-
not an issue on a normal night, but
Yeah.
if it's a June night,
Yeah.
and this is the only application, and you gotta come in to approve a lot split, you're gonna be like, where the hell is that code at? And let's get it to council to change it.
I'm okay
But
with
that may never happen, so.
Do we have a comment from our guests?
I can fill you in a little bit on how some other municipalities are doing their lot splits. So Delaware County has, on their lot split application, they have what's called a no plat, lot split. So if it's less than 5 acres, then it still needs to go through regional planning. If it's larger than 5 acres, it still has, frontage, then they will do it administratively, usually within a week. City of Columbus, what they look for is your split line, you're not gonna have any sanitary or water services crossing over that split line. Surveyor perspective, we love the, the administrative review personally.
You like coming to these meetings?
They don't make us go to them, they just do it in-house, and then they send us, an email.
Yeah,
saying-
and
So you're saying Columbus does, if there's no water and sewer going across the line, so you're talking new tap, everything's new.
Well, I'm saying if you have, a larger parcel and you have a service going across here from over here, if you
Yeah.
split that, then there's gonna be an issue.
With the water.
One owner
Yeah.
owning a portion of that
Yeah.
service.
And they want access.
And
And
Delaware
Delaware,
County also, they don't
5
have,
acres?
flag lots, so usually there's a frontage requirement you're gonna have to maintain as far as right of way goes.
Yeah.
That's good
yeah,
information.
Put a pin in it for now.
Yeah.
Come back and it's in the pocket.
I like the flag lot call out, but I do think it's something that like maybe we keep that criteria like in our back of our mind or to the side every time we look at it and say like, how would this apply? And then we just like,
We don't allow flag lots either, do we? Is that in the code or?
I was about to ask it.
that is a really good call.
If you don't, I wouldn't
Well,
recommend it.
don't.
but-
Here's the problem with me, cause I got 3 years into a new code and then we didn't approve it. So sometimes I'm into that code. So I'm like, we changed, we did a different code at one point, but it didn't get approved. But we changed a lot of the old problems that we ran into in the new code. That may have been one. So sometimes I'm like, I know I've seen that in writing somewhere, that it was in that code, but I thought we had taken flag lots out.
I don't, so our lot requirements, there's a provision that has a minimum frontage. And I don't, typically with a flag lot, memorize the township code here.
I don't think you'll allow it.
They'll do a calculation that has to do with, the back lot being a certain size and the side lots. And if they calculate a certain way, then the front can actually be lessened. And that's how it creates the flag lot, is through some calculated formula. But ours doesn't have that calculated formula to where it takes into consideration the back lot combined with the side lots equals X, and then the front can be a 20-foot lot requirement. Ours is just straightforward, has to meet, I think a lot of it's 50 or,
For widths?
yeah, for width.
Oh, yeah, generally it's at least 50 feet.
Yeah, so, like I said, in the township, they sometimes have provisions in there that formulate it. We don't have any of that formulation in our code. I don't think Monroe Township does either. I think Harlem Township,
Maybe.
Does-
That's not something I would recommend
Yeah.
investing any amount of time in.
Right.
it's gonna be a township situation probably more than ours.
If we have to approve all the lot splits anyway, we screen that out on our own.
No, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Cause there's a big difference between 50 acres where it goes behind, you got 50 acres and it goes behind a bunch of little frontage lots versus a half-acre lot that goes behind a quarter-acre lot and builds a house right there behind some guy's other house. Like,
Yeah.
there's a big difference between that.
Well, and right now it would've came before you anyhow, cause it's
Right.
non-conforming. 'Cause
That's- yeah.
There's nothing in our code that stat criteria
Those are your
that would
keys.
be proposed, so.
Thank you. All right, one more item to
That's
discuss.
all we got.
I mean, if we want to. We brought up a couple things, I guess, in the past few months. I just didn't want them to be tabled and forgotten. We talked about kind of restructuring the light manufacturing and what that looks like. And then also, there was at one point a request for variance on trees on the curb and how that how that is with AEP and what they state. And then looking at what AEP does state to put on the curb, it's not what we are currently suggesting. Because shade trees always have to be like cut back, whereas they want those 20 feet off of the road. So I think both of those things should probably be, I guess, looked into and restructured.
So I'll say this at just a very high level about that. AEP will never have the best interest of the city in terms of pedestrian environment at their heart, because that's more maintenance for them. What you all want to create in terms of walkable, friendly sidewalks with nice lush trees and things like that, any utility provider that has overhead power lines are gonna hate those, and they're gonna want little column trees, little understory trees, none of which are gonna accomplish
Provide
the
the
bigger
shade.
goals of the city. Now, I'm not saying you should go to war with them over that, but it takes oftentimes 20 years, you know, lines keep getting higher every time they come in and replace lines and poles, they all get higher, everything like that, so it goes from taking 10 years to start making problems to 20. Is it worth adjusting your whole code potentially?
Encouraging them to
So,
put underlying
just something to think about. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no,
it's a bad
that's
idea,
good to know,
Yeah,
you know?
they're kind of, and that's what I was talking with Sean about when the variance for Troyers was being talked about, was, you know, Troyers did the right thing by asking AEP, asking the provider, like, what can we plant here? We're not trying to hurt, you know, we're not trying to impede on what you're doing, but
Sure.
we're trying to meet the city's code. But when I looked through the list, yeah, they're all very small, so it doesn't surprise me that they conflict with the city's code, because it kind of.
Yeah, they're, yeah, right. And that's
They're
fine.
looking out for their best interest in you all.
No, that's
too.
interesting.
And I don't know much
perspective.
about the whole, why they pulled or anything like that. I just was simply bringing it up because when I saw it, I looked into it and it made me think maybe it's something we need to discuss. If
Yeah.
it's not, then
If
that's
it's something
okay.
you all feel strongly about, by all means, please discuss it, but I wouldn't try to change your code to make.
Maybe
the
AEP
utility
should be
providers
encouraged to
happy.
put underlying power lines in.
Yeah.
They should be
That would be
encouraged.
great.
Well,
I would
so
rather
much
that.
We
greener.
encourage
Yeah.
them to do that too, but
Yeah.
also I don't need an oak tree growing up through there and.
No,
you know.
that's fair, and that's what, if you need to adjust to have different canopy
Types.
trees.
I think
to minimize the
personally,
conflict.
yeah, personally, I think it's ugly to see the trees cut
I don't disagree.
in a way.
Yeah.
When I'm walking under them, I never really go, man, I'm so glad I have this shade tree. You know what I mean? But when I'm driving, I look and I see, I'm like, oh, that looks disgusting.
Yes.
You know, so I'm not necessarily, maybe I'm a little selfish in bringing it up too, because I thought, well, I do like the smaller trees, and, you know, I guess in comparison to the larger ones that we have to cut back.
It's a conversation to have because we do have a large tree list. Not every tree works in every scenario.
And that's true.
What we're after is a hardy tree that's not gonna snap in the wind and have disease and, you know, be susceptible to ice storms, things like that. That's what we're after.
Yep.
Like you said, you're not walking down the street going, you know, man, I'm so glad the tree looks like this. So, I mean, there's a happy medium to be had in there.
If you enjoy the visual landscape of the New Albany's and the Dublins with those types of trees, I will tell you, you're gonna be in conflict with AEP. If you want to navigate towards removing any trees near or underneath the power line, you can, and that's totally allowed, or even having a smaller tree under that, but it will move away from, like I said, the street tree environment that you see in New Albany. Next time, and I had to do this myself, next time you drive through New Albany, just take a look up and then see all the trees and you're like, they planted all those right underneath the power lines and they didn't care. And I'm like, interesting. So the parameters of our code, a canopy tree, which is what is required for a street tree, has to reach a minimum height of 40 feet in order to be classified as a canopy tree. Now, oak trees obviously exceed that.
Right.
So there are some thoughts that if I were an applicant and I'm saying, okay, visualization, let's maybe not put a big oak tree here. What was actually came up with for the Troyers, we use that as the example. A crimson maple reaches a canopy size of around 40, and it takes a long time to get there. However, it meets the requirement of the code. It's probably going to create a nice visual effect through the city, and it does soften some of that commercialized view that you see from the street. So I think there's a happy medium that exists in our code that allows for some pullback from that, my God, why would we want to put the monster tree there? And then to your point, then you got this horrendous looking cutout and carve out of it. So if you want to readdress it, certainly can, if that's your desire. Or we can kind of leave it as is for now, whatever you want to do with that. But
It might be worth looking at just for certain situations or having, you know, I don't know if there's certain caveats for different environments. You don't want to go into like my neighborhood, Leafy Dell, everything's that red maple, every tree. If you ever get a blight on red maple, my whole neighborhood's gone. Every tree in there, just like we had with the ash borer. So I mean, you definitely want to have diversity of tree species. And that'll happen quick. You know, you build a property next to a property, you grab the same trees, and pretty soon all your trees are the same tree, and you have a blight and they're dead. So I mean, it's
So I think that
Things to
one
think
would
about.
be more in the, less of the street tree requirement, not completely outside of it, but probably in the wording that you would want to define diversification in the trees, if you wanted to explore that.
yeah. So you have diversification. You can say if you have this sort of tree lawn, New Albany does it. They put sycamore trees in their tree lawn, which is hilarious because a sycamore tree gets that big.
Well, it sounds like
So-
something we want to discuss. I think
You
we
know.
could put on the agenda for the next meeting. If we come back with,
So are you,
Yeah, and
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say, sorry, I know you pointed at me because I said light manufacturing, then we talked 15 minutes on trees. So I did, go ahead, Sean.
I was gonna say, do you want tree related or review
I
our
think
current?
Probably a better way to go about that is, let me take a look at those. I'm not all that familiar with the ins and outs of the landscape portion of the code, and just see where opportunity may be best, and then we can kind of discuss those before I draft.
Yeah, I would rather utilize him with the light manufacturing over trees. So I apologize for bringing that up. But I do think that we do need to discuss light manufacturing and what that all entails before we get more questions.
Yeah, because we had talked about that at council, and I believe we directed
That's what I was gonna
directed
ask.
that back to zoning.
I was
For
gonna
us to
ask
come up with a
what
recommendation, is that
Council
the-
came up with.
Yeah, I
Think
can't
this
remember
serves
exactly
us.
what we said, but
So we play in volleyball with.
Yeah.
wait,
I can
where'd
share,
volleyball come in?
I can share some high level thoughts on that, and mainly, I've been thinking about these because of the recent update to the comprehensive plan, but I think the issue is twofold with the LM zoning district. One, it is too limited to really allow, I think, what modern light industrial uses are. So it's not saying that stuff's still not happening out there, there's still interest out there, and that sort of thing, businesses are still operating, but I do think that expanding the uses with some tightened development standards would probably be a good thing. But before that happens, I really would recommend that you all rezone some of the properties near downtown to get that LM zoning off.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, I think that happens first.
I agree,
I would
yeah.
agree with that as well. You
Yeah.
need to do that first. You can talk about them simultaneously, and you can even review them, like, so that people understand what's happening with the LM and what's happening with the rezoning simultaneously. But the rezoning should occur first.
Yeah.
Great.
Let me ask you a question, Trevor. So when you rezone something, from my experience, that can sometimes be really challenging because you have to get the property owner to agree to the rezoning.
Do you have to agree to that, or can it be the properties that are there, all, and the businesses already there are grandfathered in, and it applies to new applicants
So
or
they
new
would-
owners?
Generally,
If it's a change of the current wording, you can do some maneuvering there, but if it's a complete rezoning, sorry.
no, you're good. I was going to talk to Yaz and Thad too, because
Yeah.
my land use law experience is really from Florida, so, and they're different in every state. But we were required, if we were going to administratively rezone someone's property, like they didn't apply, but the city was gonna go through the public hearing process of rezoning it, we had to notify them, the property owner, we also had to notify all the surrounding ones like you normally do, and then you could go through. But just like any other land use decision, the applicant, if they don't like it, can challenge you in court against that. I think because, sure, in this case, you're gonna be taking industrial property and generally probably downzoning it to residential, which is what is happening on those properties anyways. I don't know that you're gonna have a lot of issue with that, but it may not be just a, like,
Slam
clean
dunk.
process. Yeah, it may not. You might just get someone that doesn't fully understand what's going on, or feels like they're being slighted, and that, I don't know if that will happen.
The
but-
technical term is, it's a taking, so you're devaluing the property. So there sometimes has to be compensation involved, if you're
So do
taking
you
an
not
entitlement
change
away.
the light manufacturing definition, but properties where we want to do more,
Well, let me ask,
increase it, and let's, light manufacturing one, I'm thinking out, like, that way, light manufacturing two,
So that
and
one
have
has
that
a-
different criteria, or
so that
something
one has a
else?
completely different classification, so that one's actually considered PD. This one's light manufacturing. If you were to have two different light manufacturings, you would still be creating
Or something else.
Don't we have two sections that are light manufacturing that's separate from the PD?
just one. we just have one light manufacturing classification. Well, let me
I
ask you
mean, as
this.
far as areas.
That's what I'm saying, so it's not a taking
One
from
classification.
You have the
but there's two
PD is
different
down
areas.
here by
Yeah,
Intel, and
they're
then light
like across the
manufacturing.
street.
Right.
That's what they're talking about.
Okay,
cleaning that up.
I apologize, yeah.
But what I'm meaning is, okay, so maybe we don't redefine light manufacturing, but you create something where we don't want that to happen, right? Like, we didn't want to expand the uses there.
Right.
But somewhere else where we do, you rezone it where it's not a taking, but it's actually giving them more.
So,
Like, do it the other way, you know
so
what I'm
we
saying?
currently have that, and we've done that with the PD district. That is kind of an example, not directly, but in a roundabout way. We took some property that was classified as one, and then it reverted it to a PD district. So it was actually zoned light manufacturing. The request came in, and it got flipped to a PD, but that was per the applicant's request.
Right.
So it allowed for a lot more entitlements to be involved with it, but again,
I mean, I think
that's
we
where
could,
you
the
wanted
right
it.
thing to do would be like change
Here's-
what light manufacturing definition is, or rezone it, right? If rezoning, I'm just thinking like runs into hiccups or there's a lot of resistance, then okay, we won't take anything away from there, but how do we
Well, let me
not
ask,
change that and then adjust it to some, like create a different,
well, let me ask you this. So with the light manufacturing, how do I want to word it?
My concern with doing that is that you're not really solving your problem. You're solving half of your
you are,
problem.
but like I'm saying, like, I think you try to do it the way we intend to, but if you run into resistance, like,
I guess just how do we start the process of doing it the hard way?
yeah.
Here,
I'm looking for plan B,
Well,
assuming plan A is gonna
let me-
have.
Let me throw this question out there first. What is your concern that you're not able to achieve with the current way our zoning is set up?
I think it's that light manufacturing, like out here
Yeah.
on past Troyers, where we don't want traffic to be increased, at least for the time
Okay.
being, because it's heavy, right? You don't necessarily want to expand the use of light manufacturing, even though the way it's written seems clunky.
So I think what some of the other members are proposing is you would actually increase some of the uses.
But not there.
Not there.
Right there, yeah, not there. But other places, we may say, you know what,
well,
light
actually,
manufacturing.
All your LM is.
All your LM.
Oh, yeah, I would
That's
want
it.
to increase it there, but to things that would fit, that would not be high traffic.
Okay, so let's keep on that. So,
The traffic's not an issue. I mean, it's gonna get changed to,
I don't know
the
that I would
current-
agree to change out there, though.
I mean, under the current heading, the comprehensive plan says that you could change it to multifamily, which that's gonna be a ton of traffic.
I don't
But-
know that it states.
It's residential, let me just.
Yeah, but not necessarily multi.
I don't know that I would want anything out there, like if we're trying to encourage development
I
that
think the
way.
goal is
Oh,
to be
yeah.
more business friendly.
But yeah, right now the definition isn't necessarily,
I mean, right now,
Up to
we're not,
date.
yeah,
You
we're,
know, it's-
Adding any
Let me go
land,
back
it's
to the
just
original question.
changing the
So,
requirements.
and I think I'm starting to get it. What is your concern with our current zoning? And I'm hearing some things that it's not business friendly.
Well, it's what came through, right? So that guy wanted to just do everything.
Yeah.
But we talked about here, like, hey, maybe we could add a couple things that we think are reasonable, that fits the area.
So
right,
let me-
like not just
let me-
ceramics and, you know.
Yeah, it was like
dull
wonky the way
clothes.
it's written.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
So let me give you actually a process that exists in our code, because I think there was some misrepresentations that nothing could ever be added there under the current provisions.
Oh, no, I don't think any of us thought that.
No.
Okay.
And I don't know if he thought that either. I think ultimately everybody's fine with the decision to make of not having someone come in and say, I want to do this, I want to do whatever I want here.
Yeah, not a
You know,
blanket.
Yeah.
it's just that when
Not a
we
blanket.
looked at the definitions of what is allowed there, it seemed kind of
Weird.
weird and vague in
It
1957.
seems like it was drafted to
Pottery
conform
and
to
Yeah, it
what's
doesn't
there.
seem like it's.
It is weird, but I will tell you, if you.
It's a really
if
fancy
you
word, but
add
yeah.
some uses, if you add a broad range of uses, you're gonna get a broad range of applicants. What I will tell you is there is a process on our books currently that allows for uses to be introduced and approved. They did not want to go through that process
Because they wanted to
because
open it up to
it was
potential,
too restrictive.
increase the
Right.
So
opportunity.
you
for
have the ability currently on the books to allow for some other types of businesses that are not listed there to occur. They did not want to be that
Right,
defined.
defined.
And I don't blame them.
So
As a
like I said,
developer, like,
I think there's some misrepresentations that,
So we talked about, like, so if a company comes in and said, we want to do research and development here.
Yes.
And we're only gonna have 15 employees,
I'll give you an example.
that'd be great. That's what we talked
You
about.
gotta give me a minute here
Individual
to work
applications.
this through because this is gonna be a real-time
What
scenario.
did he
for you.
call the building, spec buildings he wanted to build?
Well, yeah, and I don't, yeah,
He
spec,
listed
that's
spec on
not,
his
Well,
application.
and there's a lot of vulnerability for the city that you're exposed to. So let me give you a scenario that hypothetically could exist. I say that,
okay.
okay. You may have a company that is interested in a building that currently exists in your light manufacturing district, hypothetically. Said company's use is not on the approved list.
correct, because rubber's not on there.
Well, rubber is a completely different. So that's an existing non-conforming, which we worked through, they were able to expand, and so there's a mechanism, and we'll work through that. I think it was prior before you were on here.
It was.
Totally allowed to do it. This one is not a permitted use, and it would be an introduction of a new item. Hypothetically, if they wanted to submit for a very specific, we'll call it a NACS code. I don't know if any of you all are familiar with that.
The NICE codes, yeah.
Okay.
Not at all.
No.
Okay.
It's a way that
Thank you.
basically all industries are broken down into a series of numerical, like, numbers. So like, it starts with 01, 02, like 01 might be healthcare related, 02 might be
Okay.
agriculture, and
Okay.
then it breaks down
Okay.
subsequently from.
So it's a really, really specific piece, so that way you're not saying sheet metal, because that's a broad definition. You want to say certain types of sheet metal production, which would be a NACS code associated with that. So they'll probably come in, somebody may come in with a specific NACS code that you can then evaluate and say, okay, with this type of business, what is going to be the traffic implications? And we can ask the applicant to give us some high-level traffic analysis, which would be a requirement. Let's hypothetically say they would do that, and it wouldn't show that it would be detrimental to that area. The use would not be in a way that is harmful to the residents or the neighboring community. Then you could approve that NACS code to be allowed and would essentially allow this particular business to then locate there without giving a broad definition that allows for a lot of other vulnerabilities inside your code. So, like I said, hypothetically, you may or may not see this in the very near future. The whole process for this takes about 2 months, which, if you've all experienced, that's not wacky in the realm of putting something before a board. I mean, we've had design review board stuff. So I wanted to let you know that in our code exists a path and a process for something to be unlocked out there. It just has to be a specific piece rather than a broad. And the broad lends itself to the speculation with building, which I don't think anybody wants.
Right, and that's, I guess,
It has to be specific, but site selectors, realtors,
exactly what we said.
private
That's what
business owners, they're not gonna go through that. I mean, it's
Really?
a major hurdle
being
to
more
do
specific.
something specific.
Okay. I can give you 3 phone calls that it's not.
I was
think
under
we're
the
okay with
assumption
it
that
right now.
city council wanted us to review the, so there was no recommendation for us to do anything from city council, was there?
Okay, I don't need to take more work on if it's not required.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I didn't have an opportunity to let council know that this is currently on their books. It was a lot of conversation in a meeting, and we didn't want to work through all of that, and obviously in a council meeting. You guys are the planning and zoning sector. This is the appropriate place to have those conversations, and then we can backfill council. I'll have Trevor put a report out to hopefully define it a little bit better, and say, we've looked at it, there is a process in place. It's totally doable, and you're likely that something is going to walk an example through council here in the very near future.
Good to know.
Yeah, right over there.
Yeah, so, all of the gray that you see on the screen there, kind of in the upper right-hand corner, that upper right-hand right-hand quadrant, that's all of the existing LM zoning. So you see that comes down very far into downtown Track Street, and you can't really see the
Yeah.
keys, but Track Street is right here. And so, you know, that entire block to the southwest is still industrial zoning. So that's where my concerns lie. I don't really have that many concerns with potentially expanding your allowable uses in the LM zoning district. But whenever you start to pull up the comprehensive plan, all that light blue, which includes all of Track Street and all that, that's intended to be part of downtown. So again, you don't open those floodgates and have all those properties all of a sudden now be
Yeah.
viable for the
Right.
next 50 years for industrial use. The one, the further to the right, the yellow,
They're not gonna want
where the residential is, I think that's a
Well,
little bit
only-
up for
Huh?
kind of
Once they get,
interpretation on
once they get the
approval.
money they want.
But-
Flip back to the other one, Trevor. I wanted to point
We
out
were just gonna
something.
better define.
So we're
Because
talking
it
about
seems kinda broad and
transportation and
old.
roadway improvements and
is.
things like that.
It's, well, it's too.
Ryan brought up a good point. This is obviously residential in the future land use map. Let's hypothetically say, just for a moment, now, it's zoned currently, property owners would have to buy into this. Let's say this flips to residential. One of the reasons that this neighborhood did not connect here is because you're combining two very, very, very different uses. So having residential go through our commerce area probably
Be
creates some
weird.
conflict, and I don't think you want the opportunity for truck traffic to try to navigate through our residential.
No.
If this were hypothetically to flip to a residential situation, you could probably start to get a roadway segment through expansions of this or this that would then lead to roadways that are residentially based, alleviating some of the needs. So if you're taking little Johnny to school and you've got a connector to Concord, your route will probably be, oh my gosh, let me go this way, rather than, oh my God, let me go downtown and deal with all that mess. So Ryan's right that this could increase traffic, but because of the use similarities that exist, the introduction of additional roadway segments is going to be in a way that complements some of the Concord traffic as well as some of the other subdivisions. So there's more opportunities there. The heavy industrial traffic, the 18-wheeler stuff, there's only one way for that to go, and that's through here. That makes it very, very challenging. So that's just a thought. I'm not saying you don't want to change it, I'm just saying there's probably some justification for it if it does flip to residential, that the traffic could be mitigated through alternative routes.
And I think a way, if you all choose to move forward, I think, sure, in a perfect world, you would align all of your zoning exactly with the comprehensive plan. But I think in this scenario, given that I think the key kind of, not issue, but the key concern is really what happens with those industrial properties within the downtown area. You could focus in on adjusting the zoning on those first.
Yeah.
Then worry about the
Yeah.
other ones, and if and when they ever become a problem. So
Yeah.
just food for thought.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, I think we're on the same
What
page
does the
with
plan
that.
have for that spot?
For one more.
Future land use map for that is, flip that to what neighborhood, downtown, something,
Pretty bad. right?
village commercial,
So right there, the
Village
light,
residential.
village residential.
So that would be something, the
That's
intent with
one
that
owner,
would
right?
be something kind of small format, walkable, that would be connected in downtown once tech.
so suburban residential there, what does that list in suburban residential?
Suburban residential is gonna be more of what like Concord Crossing East or any of those others would be your typical like subdivided production build residential.
I'm so glad you came along.
I think it's good. Is there not LM back behind like where Ace is? I thought for some reason there was like a random
There is
out
a-
parcel.
I did too. That's
There's a
why I
small
thought
one.
there was another location for
There is,
LM.
but some-
You're right.
This
Thank you.
zoning map is a little outdated, the big chunk is now part of the PUD.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
But
that's
then, like,
why.
the
All
one,
right. I
like,
was gonna say, 'cause I
directly
thought there was
behind
some
where it's
odd.
talking
I always
about
forget about that one, you're right.
They purchased it from the port and stuff.
Yeah.
Poor? I can't hear shit.
The Port Authority.
Port
I know.
The Port Authority. I'm like,
I
from the poor? He's from
Like
New
what?
Albany. That's what it is. Yeah, yeah.
But that's
Down
what I
by
feel
the
like,
river.
While
Yeah,
it,
down by the
it is-
river.
yeah, like while it is there, it's attached to where it's already kind of zoned in the PD.
While
so
we're
it's
looking
still
at
that's-
this,
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan link on our website does not work.
You have two options, and of course, fate would have it, you pick the one It doesn't
What I
work.
wanted to
The
do
other
was
link
define
that's associated with our
not
website does
broad.
work.
We
You
have
remember this,
pottery
Teresa?
in there and
Well, I went through the planning and zoning tab
knitting and shit like that. Like,
because I was looking at.
Chosen unwise, no.
I was looking.
Fine.
Well, I was looking at our planning map, and then I scrolled. Then I scrolled up to look at our comprehensive plan, and that one doesn't
What
work.
he's saying
You are
is that
correct.
all that's, if you
Which if I'm in planning and zoning, that's what I want to see all
This
those
is
in.
crazy. Why would you?
deny.
Why would I go with the planning and
Teresa
zoning?
will mention it to our
I'll let them know
media
again.
And we do,
that it's
but
still
are
not
those
working.
the specific uses?
It's been mentioned.
because they have to come in and ask for a variance too.
I don't disagree, okay.
I don't know.
So variances are not granted on, if, I just picked up the last piece of it, and I'm just assuming, so I could be totally way off base. Variances are not permitted, well, I'm gonna use the same word twice, so let me reword that. You can't use a variance for a permittedness, and that's a terrible definition or
There is no
description.
such thing as a use variance.
Thank you.
Right, so it's,
Zoning was established,
right, so it's not a
the
variance.
crux
Right.
of zoning was to separate out uses that were incompatible, like back in the earliest.
Did I guess
land use
correctly
regs.
on what you guys were talking about?
Yes.
So you can't use a variance to deviate the allowable uses in a code because that basically undermines the entire intent of zoning itself. So that's something that's been held up in courts over about the past 100 years, that you can vary setbacks or a fence requirement or something like that to make a development work. But you can't just come into a residential property and say, oh, we just want a variance to put a meat processing plant here. That just does
So
not
whatever
fly.
use you allow is allowed within the entirety of that district.
Right.
Yep.
So I agree with the rezoning first before doing anything. I guess what I was more so is not necessarily allowing more usage,
Okay.
but better defining and updating to where it's not, like I said, pottery and dressmaking or whatever's in there right
I can
now.
wrap my head around that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was
What
just
if-
saying, let's
that
better
was our
define
aim
it
for this.
and not broaden it. I don't want to broaden it. I want to just better define it and pinpoint it, because how do we
To
keep
update
spec
it?
buildings from,
I
Yeah.
think with
from coming in
something
here?
like, I'm not gonna say you're gonna stop any spec building from being
Sure.
built, but you could expand the uses in that within reason by tightening up the development standards. So if someone wants to have outdoor storage, that's fine, but it has to be completely opaque. Like the fencing around it has to be 10 feet tall and completely opaque, so it doesn't look like trash all the time and that sort of thing. So that will kind of limit some of that spec investment, because a spec builder just wants to put up the cheapest building possible as fast as possible and get it leased.
Okay.
Someone that has to do like a little bit better landscaping requirements or have parking configured a certain way, like any small hoops you add is gonna lessen the chance or the likelihood that a spec developer is really gonna latch on something. I won't say it won't happen, but it just, and that way, even if it does happen, you all are still happy with it because it looks like what you want it to look like.
Yeah.
So that's another way to think about it. We can certainly refine those uses to make them more applicable as you see fit, but you can also do things like, we don't really care what you manufacture so long as all of your manufacturing and storage is done inside a building, that sort of thing. So you can have controls like that so that you don't get a bunch of spillover, or that it kind of contains the facility size themselves, that sort of thing. So I say, I don't have any exact examples because it will be dependent on kind of the direction that we work through, but there are a lot of ways that you can control that by, other than just having like an airtight list of what uses are allowed, sort of thing, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
So then how do we move forward with what we discussed tonight?
Good question. So if you want to explore it, what we can do is have Trevor kind of go through, and I think I've got a better idea what you're wanting as well. So anything that's antiquated that kind of makes us look embarrassing.
From the 1900s.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
Buggy
As soon as you
repair.
said that, I picked up exactly where you were going, Kyle. So, yeah, if we can take out things that are no longer there, it looks like that our code is somewhat up to date, but yet restrictive to provide us some insulation from some traffic scenarios or some conflicting, because it is close to a residential neighborhood, uses that may have challenges. We could probably work through some things.
Are you on the next one?
No. There's economic development things that go into this that, at this moment, what I will say is, let's let Trevor and I work through this, and then And that's where I'll leave it for now. And then come back with something that you can review, pick it apart, give us some recommendations. In the meantime, I'm going to work on my end on the economic development piece of this and
Pottery, figurines,
maybe
novelties.
have a conversation
Yeah.
sidebar.
Great
Some of you.
elevators.
What I can do
For all of
is, if you all think
Pottery
this would be
piece ambrosia,
helpful,
what it was.
we have in the,
No.
as part of the comprehensive plan analysis that we did like existing use maps of the city based on like actually what the property is being used for, not zoning, not comprehensive plan. I can blow some of those up and just bring you all some additional materials that you all
And they don't have to get approval.
just
by the
discuss,
state.
if that would be helpful, so you understand baseline of where we're actually at and that sort of thing, so that we can kind of
Yeah.
set the
I like
process
that.
that way.
Yeah.
Because I want to make.
And then so you think, because I feel like you feel like the rezoning should be done.
I do, yeah, because
So-
I think at the end of
Put
the
an
day,
NCA on the
a lot of those
property.
properties near downtown,
And then we can
they
get
are currently
revenue
used and have been
because
used
it's
for residential purposes.
Agreed.
for
Low amount of
a long time.
Years.
Except the bus.
I also don't think that you all necessarily
Right.
want
Necessarily.
new industrial use encroaching closer to downtown.
We don't.
based on what
Correct.
we've heard. So I think that does need to
How do we
happen.
move forward with that?
So that we get revenue.
That-
There's a lot of properties in there, so that becomes,
Going with the other.
that becomes time consuming to notify all them, get involved.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying, you might be better off
I can't.
to take the properties that are out, like in the light manufacturing proper, because they're much
Yeah.
larger, and right now there's several vacancies. You could take those and or you could take those, change the zoning on those larger properties. Eventually, by attrition, the light manufacturing near the city will go away.
No, you're not wrong. If
Essentially
you,
what
if
he's-
you wanted to,
Yeah, it's just you're flipping it the other way.
yeah, you could basically, trying to kind of best explain this. If you wanted to do what Ryan was just describing, you could basically create, and I think Kristen was kind of getting to this,
Yeah.
you would basically create like an LM 2.0
Yeah.
that would only be applied to those, the LM properties that you want to continue being used for industrial. That would keep the hurdle for all the other properties with the antiquated LM code they currently have, which would give you more time to work through the rezoning while allowing your LM zone properties that you want to flourish, be able to do that. But again, and there's no guarantee that the rezoning at the end of the day will ever get done, because it might get challenged, but that would kind of, I guess, be a way to have your cake and eat it too temporarily.
Then we just let the old one just,
What you would do then is have to work through methodically and rezone.
Each property.
Work through and get rid of that the old L
But to Sean's
process.
point about like tying, like, do we look at like different financial, like what are our goals? Not just of the property, but of the financial, like,
Right.
what do we want to entice to be there? And like, think about it globally that way.
Yeah.
That's why I think having Sean do some research for, like, at least a summary of what you've been reached out for, what the type of industries that you think might work there. I can give you all some additional, like, higher resolution maps that we had in the comprehensive plan that will help you all just have a general discussion.
Yeah.
Because I think, what I don't want to do is have us just run and create a bunch of.
No,
codes,
don't.
And then it's like,
Right.
oh, wait.
The way
what
it's
the-
written now, it's pretty complex, so I don't know how many
Being
pottery places you're having. come in.
Restrictive has
It does.
advantages.
Although,
for
like,
you
when
right
you look
now.
at it, we were like, huh, this is interesting.
Yeah, but
But it's not a
Kyle's
bad
point, I
thing right
think-
now.
I think not making it look like we're, living in the 1900s is probably
It's maybe
advisable as
reasonable.
well.
Yeah.
It
I
looks like.
definitely
it's
want,
gonna
I
be-
like restriction
Yeah,
in that area
Yeah.
for now.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
now.
for sure.
Right?
yeah, if we get a
Uh,
roadway segment, 62 bypass, whatever you wanna call
Yeah.
it, down the future.
Well, we were talking tunnels, but yes.
I think they've got one, where they get the little
23.
bubble and it's like a
Yeah.
vacuum in California. Of course,
I'm waiting for my Jetsons flying part of it.
I guess it's coming, of course.
Yeah, Trevor,
And I'm not trying to cause more work.
Technically,
We
George
are
Jetson
absolutely trying
has
to cause
been
more work.
born, he was born 2 years.
I think this is easy enough.
They said if you
and then
follow the timeline, 2 years.
If you wanna
ago,
adjourn, I'll.
so one step at a time.
Which means I'm Mr. Space.
If they want to adjourn, I can.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else not on the
Are we
agenda?
good? No.
Yeah,
We make them.
because we're going down the
motion
rabbit
to
hole.
adjourn.
Yeah. I'll second it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Bye.
Real quick.